I was tempted to suggest that that last line was not mine, but it actually was. In 1921, John Rayford Bolton wrote those H.P. Lovecraft stories. The reader, search and probe as he may, is unable to discover any trace of humor, and a view of the universe which does not take humor into consideration would be partly correct. Lovecraft responded to this amateur press association colleague. I observed Mr. Bolton's complaint that no humor enters into my tales, which omission he deplores, assuming that these tales are designed to present a view of the universe. Moreover, humor is itself but a superficial view of that which is, in truth, both tragic and terrible. The contrast between human pretense and cosmic mechanical reality. All great humorists are sad. Mark Twain was a cynic and agonized. When I was younger, I wrote humorous matter, satire and light verse, and was known to many as a jester and parodist. But I could not help seeing beyond the tinsel humor and recognizing the pitiful basis of jest. The world is indeed comic. The joke is on mankind. Perhaps Lovecraft's analytical remarks about humor were affected during this period by the somber circumstances that his mentally ill mother was in a hospital where she would soon die. Even so, a few weeks after her death, he wrote, I am as active as possible and externally appear as usual, since I never display emotion, but prefer to be calm or slightly satirical. 5 years before, he had written in a letter, a sense of humor has helped me to endure existence. The year 1921 also saw his starting on what would become his first professionally published story, Herbert West Reanimator. It and the subsequent The Lurking Fear would appear not in the dark fantasy magazine Weird Tales, still a gothic gleam in the eye of founder J.C. Hindenburger, but in a humor magazine published by George Julian Taine, knowing that Lovecraft had the talent for comedy, quote, wanted me to turn out samples of my adapting of jokes for his proposed magazine, unquote. This magazine, Homebrew, was called by one observer a slightly saucy humor magazine. It boasted a cover with an anthropomorphic full moon wrapped around with the words, full of moonshine, and showed at the bottom America's zippiest pocket magazine. A number of critics, led by S.T. Joshi, see the story as a spoof of Mary Shelley's Frankenstein, with the voltage cranked up. It certainly could be construed as over the top, but if it is a kind of parody, is it intentional? Keep in mind that it was a work for hire antithesis of how Lovecraft liked to compose. Knowing that this story was to go into a humor magazine, he may have written it with tongue-in-cheek. Since its 1985 movie adaptation, Reanimator found a lot of humor in the horror hijinks. Maybe it is woven into the original story. As for The Lurking Fear, its theme of people degenerating, de-evolving into ape-like predecessors could be a critique of mankind in the same sense that Jonathan Swift's yahoos represent man as beast. Lest it appear that human beings evolving into apes is innocent of satire, call to mind the tone of the statement in At the Mountains of Madness, where aliens, the masters of the earth, represent in their sculpture, quote, a shambling, primitive mammal used sometimes for food and sometimes as an amusing buffoon by the landowners whose vaguely simian and human foreshadowings were unmistakable. Man's importance, not just self-importance, but importance when scaled against the cosmic, was ridiculous. Lovecraft wrote in a letter, I cannot help laughing at the claim of human interest in paramount notice. Human interest meant whatever people held precious, ambition, love, anything. Not humanity alone is ridiculed, but life itself. One scientist in At the Mountains of Madness mentions elder things supposed to have created all earth life as jest or mistake. As he did in various stories, the silver key may be the salient example. Lovecraft is dramatizing his own philosophy or viewpoint. The idea that elder things created life as a joke or in error seems a satiric commentary on creation stories. Humorists had considered this before Lovecraft. Man was made at the end of the week's work when God was tired, said Mark Twain. Lovecraft's outlook shared an attitude in particular with the later dark Twain, the country's then and still eminent humorist. Lovecraft spoke of, quote, perusing some of the pessimistic writings of S.L. Clemens, which I find much to my taste. Several critics have considered humor in Lovecraft's fiction. At least one agrees with Lovecraft that their humor is totally non-existent. However, in his dissertation, John Eliot Morton found, quote, the erroneous generalization that Lovecraft's humor is straight horror also led readers to miss the humor in his writing, which is a key to understanding his absurdist approach to paradigm shifts and the nature of knowledge. And then there's the revealing title of a recent book, H.P. Lovecraft's Dark Arcadia, The Satire, Symbology and Contradiction. Much must be abridged in any brief look that compares the literary forms of humor and of horror, whether or not in Lovecraft writing, both humor and horror are subversive, showing a new and uncomfortable light on truth. They provide a shock of recognition, a shock, operative word in the case of horror. Noel Carroll states, quote, in literature, there has been a strong correlation between horror and comedy since the emergence of the horror genre, unquote. He goes on to cite the movie Reanimator as an example, and quotes Robert Bloch, quote, comedy and horror are opposite sides of the same coin, unquote. Humor and horror are individual and subject to apprehensions of an onlooker, and their success depends upon efficiency of effect. An horrific concept may be treated as horror or comedy. Take, for example, the literary treatment of cannibalism. In one classic work, children are to be eaten by adults. In another, people are raised as livestock. In a third, being snowbound reduces a stranded to cannibalism. And in a fourth, people on a raft consume one another. The first, children being eaten, is in the Jonathan Swift satire, A Modest Proposal. The second, people raised as livestock, is in Lovecraft's The Rats in the Walls, a husbandry horror tale. The Snowbound Misadventure is the comedic Cannibalism in the Cars by Mark Twain. The fourth, Shipwreck, is The Yarn of the Nancy Bell, a jocular poem by William Schwenk Gilbert. Horror can become comedy, comedy, horror. Lovecraft is associated with horror that is cosmic rather than comic. Well, not the first response that comes to the mind when thinking of the stories. Under various guises, humor appears in a number. It can be sorted into a tentative, though partly exhaustive, typology. Name, puns, and wordplay, satire, parody, and observations on humanity. Name, puns, and wordplay. Some of the puns and wordplay take the form of in-jokes, complicated by the decades that have passed. The relevance of newcomers to Lovecraft is further overwhelmed by the prominent creepy atmosphere. Without sufficient knowledge of background information about Lovecraft's friends and acquaintances, in-jokes go over a reader's head. But after multiple perusals and horror fatigue sets in, the constant reader may start appreciating the layered shadows, the intimation designed in the writing. Lovecraft finished his career, which he may not acknowledge, but his career, while career, has been chiefly a posthumous success, with the last professionally published story during his lifetime, The Haunter in the Dark. Composed in the spirit of playful one-upmanship, it is Lovecraft's answer to a story by Robert Bloch, his young and gifted correspondent, whose serious aptitude for humor showed off in his later stories in his own MC duties at Science Fiction Cons. In Bloch's short story, The Second Chapter from the Stars, dedicated to Lovecraft, the character, with more than a few nods to his dedicatee, is dispatched. Before doing this, Block had received Lovecraft's permission for the fictional Slaughter. Lovecraft signing not only his name, but that of Abdul Hazred and other characters. In the story, Robert Blake is a writer of weird fiction who lives in the same Wisconsin address as a real Block, subtly that the average Weird Tales reader couldn't appreciate. The fate of Robert Blake would lose his mind literally and his life. Prior to Robert Block, Lovecraft had incorporated other things into his fiction. Fellow fantasist Clark Ashton Smith's name was mentioned in an altered form in The Whisper in Darkness, where amid the litany of made-up names of monstrous beings and books is, quote, the Atlantean high priest Clark Ashton. Not only has Smith's first and second name been transformed into something that seems exotic, especially when spelled out, but the bit of business about Atlantean refers to the Atlantis theme in Smith's poetry and prose. If not the Weird Tales readers, many of Lovecraft's and Smith's correspondents would have appreciated that allusion. And I also talk about In the Walls of Urks, which I will only mention that in this story set on Venus, there are hornets, flies, and ugrats. Hornets, flies are named after a couple of editors that Lovecraft didn't get along with. One, Farnsworth Wright, and the ugrats is based on Hugo Gernsback, who didn't take Lovecraft promptly and made him very horrible. And actually, it might sound like Rugrats, but it's not. It has nothing to do with that. Other people in Lovecraft's sphere involuntarily lent their names to Venusian entities. Superfan Forrest J. Ackerman had criticized Smith and exchanged heated words with Lovecraft in a magazine. And so they found slimy Ackmans as well as F.J. Weeds on Venus, F.J. being the moniker that F.J.A. claimed. And then there's also something called the Battle of the Century, which he has a number of puns on his friends' names. I can skip that though. When Lovecraft chose to pun on names other than as in-jokes, whether that's debatable. Still, critic Christopher L. Robinson finds that in The Shadow over Innsmouth, where human amphibian hybrids have gills, a family with the name Gilman is a fitting pun. Satire. Well, types of humor categorized here, satire as the most common with art. Aggression, art, disdain, redeemed by wit, satire puts humankind in its place and fits with the Lovecraftian view, that is, to quote, Lovecraft said, all mankind forms a transient, negligible atom, unquote. Parody, one of satire's weapons, parody figures in Lovecraft for destiny. Air art. Lovecraft's work may be understood as parody, unquote. He interprets the Dunwich horror narrative as, quote, Lovecraft's direct parody of the life of Christ, in which an act divine man seeks to bring his kingdom to the earth, unquote. Similarly, Donald L. R. Burleson suggests that entity honed on his father during the story's climax is a parody of the crucifixion. Novelist and gadfly Michael Welbeck judged the ending a repugnant parody of the Passion. But is the Dunwich Horror a Christian parody? And if so, is it designed to mock or to shock? Perhaps this creation of Miskatonic University was a form of parody also. Novelist and essayist Angela Carter speculates that since Lovecraft was a high school dropout, he, quote, revenged himself by creating the university. And human observation. A key type in Lovecraft is the outsider, who has the potential of a droll figure to challenging norms that society has established. Think of the character Mark in the comedy show Mark and Mindy, or the slapstick extraterrestrial villain of Men in Black, or the title character in Larry Shue's play The Foreigner, and apply that fish out of water to Nathaniel Wingate Pizza. from The Shadow Out of Time, who wrote, quote, "I seemed anomalously added to absorb the speech, customs, and perspectives of the age around me, as if I were a studious traveler from a far-foreign land," unquote. His predicament could have made a sitcom. That H.P. Lovecraft's greatest influence has been on the horror tale is beyond being said. And indeed, perhaps his writing is a brand unto itself, as equally distinct as science or supernatural fiction. Lovecraft's second greatest influence has been on humor. Lovecraft's fiction has created a boutique humor industry. Christmas carols, Cthulhu toys, political slogans, etc., which subverts horror, itself a subversion through incongruity. There remains much to explore in the area of Lovecraft and the comic and his fiction, not to mention the vast potential in his letters. The subject of humor is an ocean akin to Alaska, and although narrowing into the fiction of H.P. Lovecraft, this investigation, however aspiring, must be seen as a drop